Okay, I think we are now ready to stream. We're just gonna prove the sound. Okay, it works. Okay, so we can start. Okay, so first of all, thank you for attending this webinar to Guilmar, Daniel, and Anna, and all the audience who is listening to us right now and who will listen to us in the future in the recording of this event. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Andres Gonzalez. I'm a student at Rey Juan Carlos University, and I am doing my final work degree, which is about the Conference on the Future of Europe. As a student, I thought that it was very important to be part of this conference because I liked to do both parts, the theory part and the practical one. So I thought I should get involved in the conference as a method of not only supporting the ideas of the theory, just to be involved and give my opinion and my views inside of the conference. Therefore, in the practical analysis of my work, I decided to bring together these three young experts on the European Union and foreign policy. They come from different media. We have Geopol 21, we have the Political Room, and we have the Círculo de Análisis Euro-Mediterráneo. And just to address a stumbling block that happens, the speed with which the Union acts, the strict unanimity. So we are going to talk about the qualified majority in a way that we can prevent decisions not to happen. I mean, we have had during these days the example of Israel and Palestine, the violence that it has been provoked by both of them, and the European Union could say something about it with only one voice, but it didn't. Why? Because one of their states, in this case is Hungary, decided not to sign a common, we could say a common document where the EU demanded to stop the violence in that area. So I thought when doing my final work degree that we had to think about the things that we have to change, because not demanding no violence is something that we can all everybody agree. But at that moment, I thought this cannot be possible. Even Josep Borrell, the High Representative for the Foreign Policy, said this is not possible. I cannot explain how this happened, and me neither. So I decided to create this event for the Conference on the Future of Europe. As you may know, the Conference on the Future of Europe is a project by the Council of Europe, the Commission, and the Parliament. The Council, the Parliament, and the Commission that decided to include the social, the civil society, and the citizenship of the European Union for to work, we could say, to build or rebuild again the EU after the pandemic. And this is what we are going to do today. We are going to talk in a little colloquium for the EU foreign policy, for the discussion of the qualified majority. And I'm going to stop talking about myself, about the project, and I'm going to introduce our speakers. The first one is Daniel Gil Iglesias. He works at the Political Room media. He's a political scientist and has a master's degree in international politics, both from the Complutense University of Madrid. He mainly deals with European affairs, especially integration, European foreign policy, and Brexit. He also writes occasionally about the USA and transatlantic relations. So please, Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thanks for having me. I think that we should start saying that the integration process is an ongoing process that continues to this day. And one of its weaker parts is foreign policy, because there's no common foreign policy. There's not a united European foreign policy. Why is that the case? One of the reasons that because there is no foreign policy in the European Union is because the decision-making process that, as you said, requires unanimity. One possible solution to create a really true common European foreign policy is to get rid of unanimity and instead approve things by qualified majority. And that's what we're going to discuss now.
Andres, are you mute? Are you mute?
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so now it's time for Ana Fiore Sanchez, who works at the Círculo de Análisis Euro-Mediterráneo. She studied a double degree in international relations, political science, and public management at the Universidad Rey Juan Carlos, like me. She did her internship at the Real Instituto Elcano, and subsequently studied an inter-university master degree in diplomacy and international relations at the Diplomatic School, Madrid. Currently, she is an analyst for European policies and institutions at the Círculo de Análisis Euro-Mediterráneo, and she's preparing for the competitive examination for the Spanish Civil Service Civil Administration Corps. So please, Ana.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for organizing this event. Since you already introduced me, I'm going to save that part, and I'm going to move straight to the title of the conference. That it said that should it be a myth or a possibility that the foreign policy of the European Union is decided with qualified majority or unanimity? For me, it's not a possibility. It should be a necessity. It's a requirement if the European Union wants to find its place as a superpower in a world that it's more complex every day. Like my colleague said before me, it's been an obstacle and constant obstacle since the Luxembourg commitment, where it was adopted after the crisis of the empty chair. But right now, I mean, we've had so many examples of why we need a stronger and a united foreign policy, like, for example, managing the pandemic, or like you said, the conflict between Palestine and Israel, climate change. And there are ways to move forward in this direction. For example, the High Representative, Josep Borrell, suggested the 25 decisions, so only 25 countries would have to agree on something, or even constructive abstention. But we will discuss it throughout the conference. But there are ways to move in this direction, and I think it's absolutely necessary.
Okay, thank you, Ana. And the last one, Guiomar Gutierrez Pascual, who works in Leopold 21. She studied international relations, sociology, and expert in development at Complutense. She's a student of the Master in International Protection of Human Rights at the University of Alcalá de Henares. She works at the Spanish Federal Council of the European Movement, where she is the secretary of the Spanish Federal Council of the European Movement Youth. So please, Guiomar.
First of all, thank you, Andres, for creating this event and for inviting us, because I think it's quite important that people really discuss about topics of the European Union, and I think the conference is a quite great moment to do it, and these events are like the example of what we need to do in this conference. And regarding to the topic that we are going to discuss today, I cannot be more agree with Ana and Daniel, because they have the same idea. So I think that, as Ana says, the qualified majority is not needed; is a requirement. It's a must that we need to have in the European policy, because citizens, so civil society, we are demanding a more important role of the European Union in the world. And or we only can achieve this role if we have qualified majority. We cannot need to wait to negotiate each other in order to achieve an agreement. We need to take decision quickly in order to have a position in the world. With that, we can be at the same level of other actors such as China or United States. So that's the first start. So we will discuss about it.
Okay, thank you, Guiomar. So now I'm going to introduce the structure of this colloquium for the audience. The three of them, and even me, we are going to discuss a little bit the qualified majority and the use or not of unanimity in the foreign policy of the European Union. And first of all, I would like to start by asking to you, for example, I have here some documents. I don't know if they are going to appear in the camera or not. I have here some documents. They're from the year 2018, from the past commission, the Jean-Claude Juncker Commission. And they talk about the case of qualified majority voting in common foreign policy, the qualified majority voting a tool to make Euro's foreign policy security more effective, arguments to implement the qualified majority. So I would like to ask you, why do you think that even the Commission, who has the main power in the European Union, apart from states in the Council of Europe, in the European Council, sorry, why do you think that is so reluctant to start to change this in the treaties in this case? Why do you think so?
I mean, if you want me to start, I can go. Well, I think that actually, well, this commission has made it a priority to move forward into, like a stronger foreign policy. And there are also so many big countries that support this, like Spain or Italy or even Germany. But obviously, there are other countries who are very much against it, starting from the small countries, which is funny because sometimes they don't even take part in the missions of the EU, for example, in defense, because they don't even have a navy, for example, or an army big enough to contribute. But they're against it, especially countries like, for example, Estonia or Lithuania, or countries that have a complex diversity inside their borders. But also France is one of the biggest countries in the EU. And like I said before, this all started because of the empty chair crisis. And France is a strong defender of national sovereignty, and they don't agree with qualified majority. So I don't think they're reluctant, like the Commission or the European Union itself is reluctant, but there are differences between the countries. But I think personally, if you ask me, it's not even necessary to reform the treaties to move forward in this direction. I think there are ways that could be explored that allow to have a stronger and more united European policy, foreign policy, without having to reform the treaties. It's about flexibility and finding, a common like strategic compass more than reforming the treaties, if you ask me.
Okay, Guiomar, please.
Yes, I am in the same line like Anna. I think that most of the European institutions, such as the Commission, as you said, even Ursula von der Leyen Commission, is I completely agree with the majority. Josep Borrell is like the most defender of the qualified majority, such as in his book, there is like a chapter only for the qualified majority. So, but even also the Parliament, they are demanding constantly the move forward from the unanimity to the to the majority qualified majority, because they think that is like a mass is a requirement for the policy. But as Anna says, I think that there are some states that they have like difficulties with their own countries and their own frontiers, such as Cyprus, for example, because they also negotiate, or they also have a foreign policy with other actors. So this the possibility to take a decision or to influence in that decision is quite important for them. For example, we saw it all that last summer in the discussion about the sanctions that we need to take to Belarus, because they are all constantly not taking the decision because of Cyprus and Greece, and they are like postpone it again and again. So there are like this situation. But I think that the situation changes a lot from Lisbon treaties from now, because maybe if you ask me, I can say that in 2009 no one was agree with the qualified majority, or not as much countries as now. But now the countries changed because they or also the world changed, and they know that they are quite small to take or to have influence only by themselves, and they need to other countries to take the decisions. So I think this make possible to move forward. And finally, in order not to be so long, I agree with Anna that we don't need to change the treaties. We need to be in the reality that not all the member states want to change the treaty, so that can be a difficulty. But we have the possibility in the treaties of passerelle clauses that make us available to move in this kind of decision by that qualified majority. So I think that we need to press from the civil society and from the citizens to this kind of state to move forward in this decision.
Okay, I don't know if Daniel wants to say anything about that.
Yes, just briefly. I think we should say first what is qualified majority for someone that doesn't know.
Okay,
a vote by
perfect.
qualified majority, it's a vote that requires 55% of member states representing 65% of the total EU population. If you got that, you got that decision approved. Not, it's blocked. That is qualified majority. Right now, with unanimity, we need 27 member states to agree on. Well, we should say why we consider that unanimity is a problem. It's a problem because of concrete situations that happen from time to time in the European Union, like as Gio and Andres mentioned last week, Hungary vetoed our statement about Hong Kong. We have a situation where 26 member states agreed on something. One, in this case, Hungary, blocked that decision, and the European Union can't make that decision because one single veto. That's one of the situations that happen from time to time, and it's not only Hungary or Poland that are like the biggest foes, the biggest enemies inside the European Union, but we have seen resolutions blocked by France, by Greece, etc., by Italy. So with qualified majority, what we are going to get rid of is this type of situation when only one or two member states block a resolution, the European Union. And as Guido mentioned, it's interesting that to talk briefly, because I think that we are going to discuss this deeply, about the passerelle clause, because there's a clause that requires the Council voting by unanimity to decide if one concrete decision is taken by qualified majority or not. So, in clear terms, in foreign policy, the decisions are made unanimously. But there's the possibility, if the Council decides by unanimity to take some concrete matter by qualified majority. So we decide by unanimity that we are going to take qualified majority vote. And with the passerelle clause, even if we agree by unanimity that we want the qualified majority, after we vote the resolution by qualified majority and there's a qualified majority agreeing on it, the national parliaments have like a backdoor veto because they have to ratify it. So without changing the treaties, it's possible, but it's really, really hard to implement qualified majority in decision-making of the European Union without changing the treaties. And obviously, you have to change the treaty by unanimity again.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, it is true because yeah, you can make a lot of things. For example, in the work that I'm doing for my final work, I'm studying that part. If the Conference on the Future of Europe, in which we are participating, can't really change anything if it doesn't change the treaties, because in some parts they cannot, they will not be able to. So I would like to introduce this to you. For example, Anna was saying before that with flexibility, it was possible to change things in this issue. But for example, Daniel said that it couldn't because you have to change, and the unanimity was also a barrier to change that. So, Anna, is it possible for you to change this with the flexibility that you were talking about before?
For me, it is. I mean, it's the same old debate of those who want to do more can do more and all that stuff. And it's been done before for other issues. Some of the countries that are against it say that it's a fundamental aspect of their sovereignty. But like I said, there are so many other issues that are also equally important for countries, like commerce or agriculture, that are decided with qualified majority. So I think, of course, it could be done. We've seen with the approval of the Next Generation EU and the mutualization of debt and everything, that it's a matter of willing to do things and having the spirit that it takes to move forward and to build a stronger EU.
I agree with you, but if you allow me,
Sure.
I agree with you, but for example, the vast majority of the decision making in the European Union is by qualified majority. We shouldn't forget that. But as Anna said, there's qualified majority in policies like the trade policy, etc. But trade policy is a competence of the European Union. In this case, foreign policy is a competence of the member states. So, and that's an issue. That's the biggest issue here, because if we implement qualified majority voting, some member states, obviously, like every actor in politics, it's very jealous, very confident about their possibilities, about their power, and they don't ever want to lose power. They only are willing to maybe delegate on some forms, some competencies, because they feel that they, in some way, that is going to allow them to expand their power, like with trade policy. Obviously, we have the possibility to have more ambitious trade agreements under the umbrella of the European Union that if we are alone as Spain, as Italy, as wherever. But with foreign policy, that's not really the case, because really the European Union, what can the European Union do in foreign policy? Right now, it can only make statements, sanctions, statements about human rights, civil missions, and that will require unanimity too. So what is the real power of the foreign policy of the European Union? That's a question.
Okay, I think that Anna wants to speak.
No, I totally agree with you. But I mean, health wasn't a competence of the European Union either. And during the pandemic, they've shown that there are things that can be done, and they've played a huge role at managing the pandemic, for example. For me, it's not about trying to control the whole foreign policy of all the states, of all the member states of the European Union, but I think there are at least 3 key points that should be addressed urgently, and those are sanctions, human rights, and also the role of the European Union in international organizations. And I think in those aspects, it would be easier to move forward because, like Andres said at the beginning, there are things that are commonly agreed on. And I think for the most part, all member states, or at least the 25 that I said before, would be willing to do that.
Guilmar, do you want to speak?
Yes, if I can add just one point, I am completely agree with both of them, and I also think that we don't need to give all the competence to the European Union. We can still have the competence, but even of that, we can take the decision by a qualified majority, and that's make us more stronger and more quicker to take the decision. Regarding to the 3 points that Anna says, I am completely agree, especially in the human rights and in the sanctions, because these are the ones who are most difficult to take. We saw it and we mentioned it here before, and also the role of the European Union in the international organization, because in this case, I think that most of the people, when we speak about that, they think that, oh, we are going to lose our power, for example, in the United Nations, if we go together as European Union instead as 27 votes, supposedly. But I think we need to make a half a step, not a completely a step, because in some committees, for example, we can act as the European Union. For example, in the Human Rights Committee of the United Nations, we can be an actor of the European Union can be one, or can have one seat and take the decision with a common position of the European Union, which is going to be more strength, because the European Union, which are all the countries, are also countries of the European Council, can take the decision and make it stronger and make other actors to follow their steps. So I think this is the step that we need to take. It's a half a step, it's not a completely one, but I think it will be important if we want to achieve this priority of the European Commission, which is make a stronger Europe in the world.
Okay, Daniel, please.
I agree, but I think that qualified majority in foreign policy, we have to think in the broader context, because why do we need qualified majority? What are the things that we want to do with qualified majority? Because if we implement a qualified majority only to make a statement, the situation doesn't change a bit. As I said last week, Hungary voted a statement about Hong Kong. Imagine that we had a qualified majority. That decision will have been approved because only Hungary was against it. And what will be that result? The European Union makes a statement, Hong Kong, the situation, we are deeply, deeply, deeply concerned about the situation in Hong Kong. What is the real power behind that decision? I say this because to reform the European Union and making a path towards qualified majority is going to take a lot of political cost, because we have to change the treaties, or if not, we have to take unanimously decision to allow the Passover vote. So it's which actor are going to take the burden to take all the political cost of doing that way, of walking that walk, just for make a statement. I think we have to be sure that we put the qualified majority discussion in a broader context about what are the needs of the European foreign policy and what the European Union can do to be a more effective power internationally.
I mean, for me, it's something as simple as, when something big happens in the international sphere, the countries turn to the European Union because they want to know what their opinion is on the matter. And, it's the same old issue. They don't know who to call. They don't know who's the face of the European Union or who to go to, right? Because we have the high representative, but the president of the commission plays a huge role as well. So it would be, for me, it would be an advantage just for that, for having, a united voice. Even if it's just a statement, for me in diplomacy, a statement can go a long way. It's a start. But also, sorry, I'll finish real quick. But also, like, for example, a huge part of foreign policy is also border control, and the European Union can do a lot about that. And being Spanish, I think we have to bring this up, but it's not being done, and it could also be a huge step forward. And sorry, Gilman, I'll let you talk now.
Yeah, I want to talk, but I don't know why I cannot to raise my hand, so that's why
Oh, because it's already raised. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I want to add you some as to add Daniela and also your comment something because I think as you that a statement has more power. I think we need to take in consideration that the European Union is a normative factor, and with this statement make his power or their power even stronger. And as you say, when something happened, all the countries turn around and look what the European Union is doing and what is the position of the European Union. And I think that if we can take decisions, but qualified majority, we can be stronger because we can say, okay, this is the position. We take the position. We make each other to have a common position in a quicker time. Period of time, and we can input some sanctions, some requirements to other countries. And Josep Borrell tried to do it that one with the human rights in some cases which are like extremely difficulty or violence. And I think that is a good common because, for example, with the sanction to China, European Union was the first one to take it, and all the countries and the biggest countries take it later. So it seems like the European Union is running is leadership in this direction. For example, in the ones section I referred, the China's one. After that, United Kingdom take it, and also United States. So I think this is why we need to have qualified majority, because in that way the European Union can be stronger in the world and can be quite important actor in the world. That is what we aim and to have, and that's finally my point of view.
Yes, I mean, for example, when the whole issue with the president of Venezuela happened, that's something as simple as recognizing a legitimate president or not, and the EU couldn't even, like, it couldn't issue enough to address the situation. So, for example, for me, that would make a huge change if we could do that unanimously or with the majority of the Europeans.
Okay, Daniel, please.
Yeah, I agree with both. Yeah, but I think that we have to think about other things that comes with qualified majority. For example, compliance, and that's important because, for example, in 2015, the Council decided by qualified majority to establish a relocation system for asylum seekers that come to Italy and Greece. That system was approved by qualified majority, and only 4 states voted against it. It was Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, and the Czech Republic. The system was approved with the against vote of these 4 states, but the system was never implemented because these 4 states just refused to implement it, refused to comply with it. So if we are going to implement qualified majority voting in the European Union, we have to establish a system of compliance, a system of oversight to oversee that the member states comply, that the member states sign and approve and comply with everything that they say they want to do. And that is tricky too, because if we're going to have an oversight institution, or are we going to expand the supervision competence of the European Union or the European Court of Justice, we have again to change the treaty, or we have to create a new oversight institution, a new supervision institution, and that will require a lot of consensus. So I insist on the treaty because I think that whether, as Anna said, and I agree with her, that there's a lot of ways where we can implement qualified majority without changing the treaties. I think sooner or later we have to have that discussion of the treaties, and sooner or later we have to think about them and change them if we want to be a real actor. One thing that we have not talked about is defense. Obviously, foreign policy is not only about soft power. Statements can have a lot of power, as you said, but A powerful military can have a lot of power, way more power than statement. We don't have that, and we are not going to have that in the distant future even. I don't think that I'm going to see a European army in my lifetime. But we have to have that discussion. If we have to be a real actor and have a real influence in the world, we have to have that sort of discussions about foreign policy, about defense, about changing the treaties, because eventually, sometimes you have to do it.
Okay, I agree with you by that by changing the treaties, it will happen something better because, as Daniel was saying, if you want to even change the treaties itself, in themselves, sorry, you have to have the unanimity too. But I'm also with Anna that it could be more difficult because if you have to join all the states, all the 27 states, to agree to destroy the power that it's for them to say, okay, if I don't agree with this, it's not done. So I think that that's the difficult part, and I think that they will never destroy that movement. It could be possible, I don't know, okay, but it is something related to states, and I think that all of you have agreed that it's something related to states, and it's a problem of competences. That even if you have the qualified majority, you cannot do anything else if you don't have the competencies. All the people who are watching us can see in the functioning treaty of the European Union that the foreign policy is not a competence of the European Union. It's apart from of the treaty, of the articles of the treaty. So I would like to ask you, if they don't agree, if we are realistic and they don't agree in destroying this kind of measure of, they don't agree, all of them, okay, I mean, is differentiate cooperation a way to eliminate, I can say, the unanimity, or it could also destroy the image, the outer image of the European Union for all the countries. What do you think about it?
Well, for me, and thank you for bringing this up, because I think the main issue is that we're discussing something that's a very advanced stage, but we have to take into account that with the broadening of the European Union, we have countries that are at a much more early stage in the integration process. And those countries have to worry about much more basic issues before they're ready to address something as big or as important as the European foreign policy or the European army, which, by the way, I totally agree with you on the defense issue. But I think we have to understand that, and being realistic, it's not ideal, but it's a way of moving forward. For me, moving forward is better than not doing it. So I'll take what I get.
Okay, Daniel, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's better to have a statement than to not have a statement, obviously. And as you said about the possibilities, I think that Borrell, with Borrell, Josep Borrell, in some statements, it was an agreement between 26, and in the statement, it was an asterisk saying this country was against it. In a way to release the statement anyway without the consent of another member state. With enhanced cooperation, I think it's interesting, and obviously it's applied to other things like defense with PESCO, but it depends on the subject, really, I think, because in foreign policy, for example, sanctions. Imagine a situation where the European Union decides to put sanctions to amplify the sanctions on Russia, for example, by enhanced cooperation. And only a handful of countries decide to take on Russia. And Germany is not among them, for example. What is the effect of the sanctions then? Because we are always assuming that the countries that are that are against a resolution or statement, we are always thinking about Hungary, Poland. We say, okay, we can agree with them, we can function without them. But if it is Germany, the one who decided not to participate in that enhanced cooperation, it is France, Germany, Italy, Spain, what will happen then? Will that decision have any power? Will we could call that a European decision? So, given that the only thing we are going to do with the European foreign policy is sanction and civil rights statements, human rights statements, or maybe several missions, I think the enhanced cooperation is a very tricky path to follow. Really.
Yeah, I'm completely agree with you. Because I think that the has cooperation is like quite difficult to take it in that decision. But I think that what the members state and also by the conference, civil society and citizens must to make is to show the member state that which are again the qualified majority, is to show that they are not going to lose, or they are not going to be deeper without their qualified with the unanimity. But instead of that, they are going to be stronger because they can have biggest power. For example, we are always talking about that Hungary is using the veto, or also Poland, but we need to show them that if they want to take a decision that is like quite important for them in the foreign policy, all the member states, or at least qualified majority of the rest of the member states, can have the possibility to take this decision against of using the veto. So with this decision and with this step, they will also win. They are not only going to lose, but against of that, they are going to win. And I think with the conference on the future of Europe, as Anna mentioned before, we are talking about a lot of topics. For example, health Health European Union, and okay, we can try to work with the nowadays treaties, but it's quite of difficulty. So it's in my opinion, is more than possible that we need to reform these treaties, and if we need to reform it for health situation, which is like a must, is also a needed, and we started this kind of process, is easier for us to take the decision also in qualified majority, because we have in favor like the biggest states. So I think it's easier that they could have a negotiation with these small countries such as Cyprus and Hungary or Poland, which are always or most of the times using the veto. So I think it could be easier.
Okay, I don't know if anyone wants to speak more.
I just want to say one thing very briefly. We are talking about the problems that unanimity presents because of its difficulty to reach an agreement. But unanimity doesn't work even when there is an agreement. Even when the 27 member states agree on something, that agreement is usually the lowest common denominator. If you have to make a statement and 27 political actors has to agree on it, even if they agree, that statement is going to be weak because it's going to have something that everyone can buy. So I think that we have to realize that the European Union is always going to have a weak position internationally with unanimity, even if there is an agreement or not. If there's not, because obviously the foreign action of the European Union is obviously blocked, but if there is an agreement, it's always going to be a weak position, because there's no a position that everyone agrees on. There is a position that no one can reject, and they're very different things.
Okay.
No,
So tell me.
No, I was going to say I agree with your realistic point of view, but being an optimist, I have to say that we've seen with, like I said before, with things such as the negotiations for Brexit or the next generation EU, it takes time. I mean, good things take time, but it seemed impossible. in the end, it happened, you know. So I think it's a matter of willingness and also priorities. And I think having a united foreign policy has never been a priority of the European Union, as it's not a competence, like we said. But in the world we're currently living in, it should be. And I think it's a matter of like really realizing that and working towards that goal. It will take time, of course. It won't happen overnight, but.
Okay, Daniel?
I agree with you. Obviously, the EU is slow by definition, but that's okay. The important thing with the integration process is not where are we now? It's where are we now with regards to 10 years ago, to 20 years ago. Obviously, there's a slow process, but the question is, today we have more integration than 10 years ago? And the answer is obviously yes. Presumably, 10 years later, we are going to have the same discussion, but we will be more integrated. But one thing that I wanted to say, Anna mentioned Brexit. Anyone remembers the Brexit strategy, the British government strategy when the Brexit process started, when the negotiations started? The strategy was to hold bilateral talks to divide the European Union and maybe to cohort some countries like Poland or Hungary against the European Union in favor of their own interests. Why? Because they know that the trade agreements we need unanimity. So if they can cohort just one or two member states, obviously things were going their way. The European Union stood its ground, we all remain united, and the United Kingdom signed an agreement that obviously they are not happy with. But that's one of the main reasons to get rid of unanimity, because foreign powers, foreign countries can rely on just one actor to block the European Union decision making. Like I said again, Hungary blocking a resolution on Hong Kong. Hungary has a special relationship with China. It benefits very, very well with the Chinese investment. So we have to be aware of that, especially like as Anna mentioned too, the integration process, the accession process, the enlargement process continues. There's countries, even though Croatia was the last one in 2013, and since then no new countries have joined the European Union, the enlargement process continues. And especially when the enlargement process right now is focused on the Western Balkans, where we know that some countries, I'm thinking about Serbia, for example, have special and close relationship with European strategic rivals like Russia, or all the region is dependent on the Chinese investment. So if we are having the problem with unanimity right now with 27 member states, maybe in 10, 15 years, we are going to have the same problem, but with 30, 31 member states, and some of them very heavily influenced by China or Russia. And that's one situation that we really, really, really want to avoid. So unanimity, it's only going to get worse. We have to get rid of it and get rid of it quickly.
Absolutely, and yes, and I think that's why we can't accept that we are only a soft power in the world. That's why we have to work towards the goal of, you know, speaking the language of power, because there are a lot of countries who speak it very well.
Also, we need to remember that United Kingdom used it in the negotiation of the Brexit, but United Kingdom used the veto quite a lot in the foreign policy, because he was the ones who is using more. So he knew really how to work and how to negotiate with each country in order to find this kind of conflict and make the decision impossible. And that's why after the Brexit, maybe it's quite easier.
Okay, I totally agree with what you were saying, because yeah, you have the problem, like Daniel was saying, that if you have a majority, maybe in the future we will not have 27, we will have 30, we have 31, 32, and what could we do? Okay, that's right. And the important thing is, what could we do with those states that they vote negatively? I mean, for example, in a decision that it is voted by 26 and one has voted negative. what happens with it, because it's also a matter of we could say like the image is not the same as everybody is voting the same. Although it's complicated, but Anna was also saying that she's positive about about obtaining that unanimity. But I think that it's a problem of political culture. Although we are inside of the same continent, sorry. Although we are inside the same continent, we have different cultures, we have different political cultures, and for example, in the case of Israel and Palestine that we were saying before, in 2017, I think so, they decided again to make a common decision about the Trump decision to move the capital to Jerusalem, and we couldn't do it because another time, I don't know what happened with Hungary, but Hungary and Czech Republic, both of them decided not to sign that declaration. And they were saying that the thing that Hungary said about this is that we don't need a common position of the European Union because every country has its own interests, and they don't believe in a common interest of the European Union. So as it's not needed, they vote against it. So I want to ask you, is it really necessary to have a common foreign policy, or is it possible to eventually have a common foreign policy? Because at the beginning, you were saying that we don't have it. And we are having some barriers to stop it, the unanimity, we can say we don't have that competence, the foreign policy has a competence. So is it possible a common foreign policy? Do you think that, okay, you were saying about differentiate cooperation, you were discussing about that. Do you think that is it possible? And if it is possible, every country would agree on that? I think that, I don't know which one was first. I think it was Guiomar first.
It's the same. If you want to start, take your floor. If not, I am completely agree with you. I think that for now, in my opinion, it's not possible to have a foreign policy common because it's like quite difficult. Even as Anna says before, there are some states that are in its first steps in this integration, so it's quite difficult to say them, okay, now we are going to have a foreign policy, common policy. But I think maybe in, I don't know, 10, 20 years go on, we can take this debate and say that it is possible. And also we need to think, because you were asking before in your speech why Hungary is always using the veto with Israel and other countries with other like for example Cyprus with Russia, or in Greece with China. I think that it's not only something about foreign policy, but it's also about home policy, because in the case of Hungary, they have a lot of people who do this. So that's make that maybe the government will be affected by this kind of decision against Israel. And it's the same in the case of Cyprus and with Russia and Belarus, because there are like quite a lot of entrepreneurs living there. So I think it's quite too difficult to say them, okay, you are going to give all the powers to the European Union, but maybe they can I don't know how to say that, they can move forward in the qualified majority, because even of that they can negotiate with other states, because as Daniel said before, qualified majority doesn't mean that we don't need to negotiate, and you cannot gain or win something about this kind of statement. So I think this could be the middle point between the no and the yes, completely yes.
Okay, Daniel, please.
Yeah, as you said, Andres, the real question here is, we can talk all we want, but the real question is, why will Hungary give up the veto? That's the question. If we don't have an answer to that, we can't talk about qualified majority, because it will never come. So we have to create some incentives, some strategies to give those states, those rogue states inside the European Union, if you wanted to call that, to come with terms in terms with that. We have to agree with them. We have to understand Hungary, but obviously they don't have a constructive position, so it's very hard to do it. And one thing that we have to keep in mention, Guido said, right now it's not possible to have a real common, united, common foreign security and security policy, but the European Union needs to have some sense of urgency. Uh, Russian troops are in Ukraine now. The situation in Northern Ireland is happening now. Lukashenko and Belarus is happening now. The opposition in Belarus is in Lithuania now. We have to have some sort of tools, of capabilities to respond to all the threats that goes against us today. So obviously it's a slow process. We have to be realistic. We have to be patient. But the European Union needs to have a solution now to a lot of those problems. And one thing that I want to mention about the power of negotiation that Guido mentioned, if we implement qualified majority, all the interests of the 27 can be better represented than with the unanimity. Because right now, when we are going to start a negotiation and Hungary or Poland or whatever says, no, it goes against my will, it goes against my interest, I'm going to veto. The negotiation pretty much is over. Because, you know, some states like Cyprus or Italy or use from time to time their veto as a bargaining chip to, I'm threatening with the veto, but I'm not really willing to use it, so maybe you can offer me more. But some states, like Hungary, no, they say they're going to veto, and they are going to veto. They don't care about possible negotiation. But with qualified majority, when the threat of the veto is not useful because you can veto, you have to negotiate. If you want to see your interest in the decision-making powers of the European Union, you have to negotiate. You have to be sure that the other countries understand your worries and implement them, and they have your voice into account. And that can only be achieved with qualified majority. With the veto, I will only veto it, and that's the end of the process.
Yes, I mean, I just want to add that if the question is, can we have a common foreign policy? I'll say what I said at the beginning. Yes, we should. We need to, and we need to move towards that goal. Of course, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. Like I said, there are a lot of factors that influence this issue, like history, identity, geography. But like Borrell said, we need to work towards building a common strategic compass, at least for the bare minimum. If we can agree on that, then it's a start and we can go from there. It will take time, but I think the European Union has realized that it's a necessity.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a lot of questions. So, sorry. Okay, I thought there was a sound there. Okay, sorry. Okay, so we have a lot of questions now. So if you don't want to say anything, okay, we will have time at the end of the questions time. Okay, so I would firstly start saying that Anais de Tournel says that, hello, thank you for the event. I was wondering why did Hungary veto the statement about the situation between Israel and Palestine, even though they are not impacted by the statement being released. And he also says that, do you think that the problem is also that Hungary is too close to China? And this is reflected in their refusal to adapt statements, for example, about Hong Kong?
Who wants to go?
Whoever.
Well, I think that Hungary used the veto as a way of reaffirming their national sovereignty. Hungary is a country that, as Guido said, doesn't believe in the need of a common foreign security policy. So they're just going to do whatever they need. And maybe they think that what they need is to harm the common position of the European Union, because they feel that that common position harms their sovereignty, their autonomy, and their capacity to influence in the world. And about China, I think that qualified majority has to be the first step, the stepping stone in a more broader form about foreign policy, about the place of Europe in the world. And one of the things that we have to consider is foreign investment in capital and in capital industries, in capital sectors in the European Union, because we need to avoid situations like the Hungarian one, where Hungary depends a lot on Chinese investment. We have to avoid that to avoid situations of veto about statements that we consider are important for ourselves. So but everything is interconnected, because if we have a really union fiscal policy, common fiscal policy, we can invest heavily with European partners, with European funding in regions that are well behind, like Anna said, in the integration process, to help them to not to depend on foreign investment. But we don't have that. So they have to rely on China, on Russia, on other countries. And that harms their autonomy too. So yeah, I think that's a problem, definitely, yeah.
And also regarding Hungary and the Israeli and Palestine conflict, I would go back to historical reasons. I mean, we know that Hungary has a history with the Jewish community, so maybe because of that, they were a little bit more, sensitive on the issue. And just to give a concrete, like maybe explanation to the Israeli issue.
Yes, I want to add to that one of the problems that Hungary has with this statement is that it says they call a final of the violence between Palestine and Israel, and Hungary wants to say Hamas and Israel instead of Palestine, because if you say Palestine, that means that you recognize in some way Palestine. So that's one of the reasons adding to the fact that the Jewish community in Hungary is quite the biggest and is important also in the business and in the policy. So that's exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jenny, you have the hand raised. Do you want to say anything?
I'm good.
Okay, that's right. Okay, so thank you. And now it's time for Alvaro Meya, who is asking, do you think we are closer now to adopting the qualified majority due to the consequences that COVID-19 has generated, since it's making us see that we need to respond more swiftly to global emergency? Do you think that COVID-19 will help us to create a qualified majority?
I think we're closer to qualified majority. I don't know if it's because of COVID-19, because I think that some blocking states like Hungary, like Poland, are pushing way too far, and there's some sort of tiredness in the European Union about this situation, and I think we're close. Obviously, maybe COVID-19, the pandemic has put some sense of urgency, as I said, and yeah, I think that could be a factor along with others.
Yeah, I am in the same position as Daniel. I think that with COVID-19, the world's changed, and we are more focused or more conscious about what the world is saying, about what is happening. And with COVID-19, we learned that we need to act as one actor, not as 27 different member states, and maybe that's changed in some kind the impression or the position of some member states. But also we need to remember that with COVID happens like Libya, the situation in Lebanon, Belarus, Morocco, and also now the situation in China and Hong Kong. So I think all of this is not just like some one card, is a lot of cards that make us advance or make us more needed to change to qualified majority.
Okay, yeah, indeed. Anna before said that due to the pandemic, we have had some unanimity, for example, for the next EU generation process and all these things, but it's not the same, because in this case, we are saying that we want to have more qualified majority, and we have the unanimity for the qualified majority, and I don't think that they are going to be able to agree on that, because it is different. But I don't know if Anna, do you think that it is possible after what you were saying, that with the COVID-19 we have had some unanimity decisions? Do you think that a qualified majority is closer?
More than unanimous, I would say united. So it doesn't matter who agrees. The end result, European Union acting as one, playing as one team. What I was trying to say is that I think COVID has brought us closer to the reality that global risks require global responses, or at least united ones. So if you want to play a role in global risk, such as a pandemic, or foreign policy, or even, I don't know, climate change, you have to act as one, and the European Union has to be united. You can get there through unanimity or qualified majority, but the important result is that the European Union acts as one team and has one voice.
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving on to the next question. It is from Jar Bulment. Sorry for the pronunciation. I don't know. Jar Bulment. He says, "I am a member of ex-Palestine. I am very disappointed that there are no sanctions towards Israel, despite all the human rights violations, land grab, home demolitions, 4,000 political prisoners, etc." And he also says that abolishment is necessary for an influential foreign policy. Okay, thank you, Jar Woman, for your opinion, for your information. Yeah, really, thank you. And I think that by your opinion, I could again ask: do you think that the unanimity is making the EU image a little bit more weak, a little weaker for the others? For example, I was reading before, and also related to what Jart was saying, that the EU, due to the fact that they don't have the common decision for demanding the stop of the violence in May, they decided that the best actor to, we could say that, to be in the middle between Israel and Palestine was the United States. When everybody knows that the United States is not against Palestine, but is nearer to Israel because of their interests. So, do you think that the image is destroyed by this type of decisions by unanimity?
I agree with you that maybe this kind of unanimity make weaker the European Union, or at least the image of the European Union. But I think answering also the comment of this viewer, I think even if the statement could be out or will be taken by unanimity, it's not going to be a great or the best one for everyone, because it's an agreement of minimus, and is going to just ask for the stop of the violence, and is not going to say who is good or who is bad, and what Palestine is doing or what Israel is doing. So it's just going to ask for the stop of the violence. And I think it's true that the weaker, European Union could be weaker, but in the case of Israel and Palestine, I think the European Union says that the ones who be in the middle needs to be Egypt, because the European Union think that a regional country must be the one who take the decision, because it's nearest and knows the situation. And I think in that case, even without the statement, the European Union raised a good stop of the violence by a good way, because Egypt has had this role and take this role, finally achieving this agreement. So that's maybe as an international limit, the European Union has not raised anything, and there is no power. But the negotiation, as for example in Oslo agreements, also make it. So that's why I think maybe the European Union by foreign but underground can arise this way. But we need the qualified majority to not to do it only by underground, but also in public.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, perfect. So we have finished with all the questions. Okay, and we are out of time, but I would like to finish just with a little sum up of each of you. So please, who wants to start? Who wants to? I could say that the aim of this conference is to bring Europeans together to work together for the European Union. I was reading during my work that the populism, one of the techniques of the populism is to put the citizens against their institutions to obtain their confidence. And I think that this is a good exercise for European people to work for their institution and that they think that they are part of the project. And I would like just to sum up from each, little sum up from each of you, please, Anna, Guiomar, Daniel, a little sum up of the qualified majority in new foreign policy.
I just to sum up, I just want to say that we are all agreed that qualified majority is a need, is a requirement for the European Union, and we need to work for that, even by flexibility or by treaty change. Maybe some countries are against now to the treaty change, but we need to, as civil society and with events like that, we need to make the member states clarify and to know all the difficulties that Daniel says that has this only flexibility of the qualified majority that implies at the end the unanimity of all the countries, and that if we don't change that, we are not going to be stronger in the world, which is at least one of the priorities of the Commission and also of the conference in the future.
Okay, Anna,
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes, to add on what Gio said, I'm gonna bring back a phrase that I said before. I said the European Union has to learn how to play or how to speak the language of power because other countries do it very well. So of course, for having a common foreign policy is a necessity and a requirement for that. And I think conferences and talks like this are, a step forward in that direction. At least you have to bring up the debate in order to move forward.
Yes, I agree. Obviously, qualified majority is a necessity. It needs to happen. I think it will eventually happen. I don't know when, but it will eventually happen, I think. But the qualified majority alone is not going to solve all the problems with the European foreign policy. We have to implement, adopt the qualified majority voting, but in a border context, as the first stepping stone in a process of thinking of rebuilding the international order and the international position of the European Union. We have to think about soft power. We have to think about hard power. We have to think about defense. We have to think about obviously the decision-making process and unanimity and the qualified majority. We have to think about foreign investment. We have to think about a real effective neighborhood policy. We have to think about all these areas that constitute the foreign policy. Qualified majority is only a part of it. But I think, like as ever, the European Union will go very late, will go almost late, but it will eventually gain an international position of force.
Okay, thank you, all of you. I would like just to finish with a little sum up for my part. I think that all of you, even by myself, agree that this is a problem of competence that we have to reform. The word that we have to use here is reform something. We don't know if the treaties, we don't know if another rule, but we have to reform the way that we are implementing the foreign policy. And we have to negotiate at the end, because this is a case of negotiation. We have seen it with the next EU generation system that there was a really hard negotiation last summer, and things can be done, yeah. But I think that there has to be a common interest, or to be near of a common interest to implement this. And the words that I say is that reform. And I think that it is clear something from this colloquium that this is not just about qualified majorities, about all the things too in the foreign policy. But qualified majority, it will help a little bit to obtain the objective, we could say, of a common foreign policy for the European Union. So it has been a perfect time. Okay, we don't have more time because it will last forever for this topic. But thank you, Guiomar, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Anna, for participating in this little colloquium for the Conference on the Future in Europe. And thank you, everyone in the audience. Thank you to the people who has asked us, for example, Alvaro, Jart, and Anais. Thank you for your comments and questions. And we see you in another period, or another, we could say, I don't know, this lasts until 2022. It could happen everything. Okay, for example, you work in organizations that they're next to this conference and next to this topic, so maybe you will participate in another time if you have like this one. So perfect. We have another comment. Sorry. Okay, Alvaro, who is saying thank you to all of you. Okay, so it's time to say goodbye. Thank you for participating again. Okay, just a little thing. Everybody is going to have, sorry, this video uploaded in YouTube after the finish of this colloquium. So you could share it, you could do whatever you want to. Okay, and the important thing is participating, because we have the opportunity, and if we have the opportunity, we have to take advantage of it. Okay, so thank you and take care.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, just a moment, please.